This is Mile High.
Do I want to tell the story or do I want to show the message?
You've got a lot of work to do between Mile High.
The time has come where we can know
we have a responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right,
it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
it's now time for the show.
Welcome to the Mile High podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles, with an incredible guest, Molly Cahill. And I want to, before we get started, remind you to please hit subscribe. Whatever platform you are consuming this, watching, listening, whether it be iTunes or Spotify or something else, YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe so you are always dialed into Mile High Tick. And also make sure you register, riseuptomilehigh.com, for Mile High 12, aka Mile High Noon. It's hard to believe it's 12 years of Mile High, and look forward to seeing you there. We already have a record number of people registering early out, and you want to make sure you and your team are on higher ground in September. It's where you want to be, September 26th and 29th. Today, you're going to get to know more about social media marketing, particularly Instagram, with Molly Cahill. She helps us with our social media, which we are so grateful for. Her team is incredible, and this will help both the DIYers that are doing it themselves and want to learn more, or the people are saying, well, I don't want to do it by myself anymore, I can't help. Because people are either on one side of that fence or the other side. So thank you for joining us today, Molly Cahill. I almost said Dr. Molly Cahill. I guess you're a doctor of social media. So
listen, the things I write about, sometimes I feel like I'm like, that old commercial, I stayed in a Holiday Inn Express last night. That's how I feel. Like I was just writing a post for a client about the DNS protocol, and then someone was like, can you write one about proper toddler footwear with a wide toe box? You know what I mean? So like, I'm always researching fun stuff.
Right. Exactly. Well, first of all, let's help people get to know you just a little bit better personally. So, we're being curious about you. Share a little bit about how you found yourself. Let's say start with chiropractic in the chiropractic world.
Yeah, no, it's a wild story. And I think so many of us entrepreneurs have like it's almost like we never really sat down and said this, I didn't sit down one day and like, you know what, I'm going to do Instagram for chiropractors. Like this is just such a random nuanced thing that I do. Right. But back when I'm 38 now, but back when I was around 22, this is really embarrassing. I was training for just a 5K. I was an athlete my whole life, but I was never a runner, right? Like I hated running. I still don't understand runners. Like God bless you if you're a runner. But I was training for just a 5K and I hurt my back at 22. I, at the time, sold advertising in a newspaper, like a small town newspaper. And I had just sold an ad to a chiropractor, and he was like, well, I can help you. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, buddy. Like nobody in my family had, you know what I mean? I was very skeptical.
Right.
And wouldn't you know it, I felt better within about a week. So,
Imagine that.
but I think there's a whole other side topic podcast that I should cover more in my content, and that we could even talk about if you want to. It's not even what I meant to talk about today, but what's funny is even after that, feeling better, I didn't stay with my care consistently.
Oh, really?
No. I was like in and out, up and down. There was at one point I was told I needed a heel lift for my shoe and to take muscle relaxers. And then I was like, oh yeah, chiropractic. And I would go back. So I don't know if it's just because I moved a lot, because we were military, you know what I mean? I don't know if I just wasn't properly educated, but I know that's like something that you and Rochelle do such a good job of for the profession, is like helping, especially like younger docs, like know how to educate. Cause like, I don't think I was ever properly educated on the true power of chiropractic care from the jump. And that's why I was always in and out and in and out. Even during pregnancy, I was under care. And the doctor I was going to was like, Yeah, well, I don't really see pregnant women, so, and then I just like stopped getting chiropractic, didn't refer. I
Wow.
was in San Diego, for goodness sakes. There's now a bunch of them are my clients, right? I'm like, he could have referred me somewhere, So like I said, this is not the rabbit hole I meant to go down, but I think it's an interesting topic. Um, we always hear the stats about how many people aren't under chiropractic care, but like how many people have been at one point in time and then weren't again, right? So I think that's a whole other cool point of conversation.
Well,
But
and that happens so often, and many chiropractors don't put the energy into. I mean, you and I are connected to people that do focus on helping
mhm,
people know a bigger picture of chiropractic, but there's probably the majority of the profession doesn't.
yeah.
So, and we may not be connected to that world, but a lot of them are, don't go down that path, which is what actually makes it, even more important for you to do
Yeah.
the job that you do to help people with social media. So let's talk about that. How'd you find yourself in the world of social
Yeah.
media?
So, yeah, I didn't mean, like I said, I didn't mean to take that zag, but I was like, you of all people would find this so interesting, Dr. Danny. But that I was like not consistently under care even after being helped, and that disconnect with the education from the jump. But so fast forward, I was in medical sales for 6 years. I called on pain management and addiction clinics every day. And when you see that and you see how broken things are, you're like, wow, there's got to be a better way, right? There were some terrible medical missteps with my dad. He's since passed away. There was some stuff with me. And when we were stationed in San Diego, my husband was a pilot in the Marine Corps. I became friends with my daughter was about 6 months old. She was so fussy all the time. And I was like, I think I remember seeing somewhere that there are chiropractors that like just see kids. So mind you, Dr. Danny, I've been at this point seeing a chiropractor on and off for 8 years. And it did not dawn on me until my daughter was 6 months old and I couldn't take it anymore that, wait, I think there's this subspecialty. So I'm like, wow, there's so much education that needs to happen, right? So I found a local pediatric chiropractor, Dr. Chrissy. We became friends. And at that point, I had quit my job in medical sales when my daughter was born because I was like, I can't travel like this anymore. Talk about burnout. I was exhausted. And she was like, well, hey, you want to help me with my Instagram? And then like the proverbial rest is history.
Very funny, very funny. It's interesting how life brings us in different directions.
Yeah.
So a lot of chiropractors have I'll just say I think it's a lot of chiropractors because this is my experience, and I have to do social media with both my practice, right? Mile High, the network teaching that we do,
Mhm.
lifetime wellness. So that's a lot of things to juggle. So I personally have a love-hate relationship with
Yeah.
social media, and I think a lot of chiropractors may. So what is important for doctors of chiropractic about social media today?
This is my favorite question, is kind of the more like the love hate, very common. I think the main thing there is reframing rather than saying, oh, I need to post today and just I need to post today and it's on my to-do list. It's like, well, why? Why do you need to post today? And then just going back to your deepest why. Like I tell people all the time, this is a true story. My sister-in-law, I have a 2-year-old niece, and my sister-in-law learned how to breastfeed watching reels.
Ah,
So it's like when you think about how many people you're helping that might not know, like that mom who's just her kid's been on 4 rounds of antibiotics in 4 months for ear infections, and they're just like, oh, I'm exhausted. I don't know where else to turn. And instead of you putting as like a checkbox on your to-do list because it's something you quote should be doing, it becomes about reconnecting with your deeper why. And I think that shifts everything.
hmm.
And the other thing is, so this is a perfect example, and I could name off like 15 of them. From a practical standpoint, my two mom friends and I, we realized we're like, oh my gosh, we haven't been to dinner, just the three of us, in like a year. You know what I mean? So we're like, let's go somewhere cool. Let's find some cool restaurants. And it's like the places that don't have Instagram accounts, like you don't get it. People, I would say, like I said, I'm 38, but all of our ages, like we want to check places out on Instagram. That's what people send each other, usually more than someone's website. Now, we both mutually have perfect patience in common as like someone we love. Your website also needs to be great and user friendly, and your SEO needs to be dialed in. You know, it needs to be mobile responsive. But your social media is almost where people really go get to like a feel for who you are, right? Or like they go to the restaurant. Maybe like there's been times when I've gone to a restaurant out of town and I'm like, oh, what do I need to wear to go to this restaurant? Their website's not showing me much. So I'm going to go to their Instagram page and see like, what are people, are they in jeans? Are they in dress? You know what I mean? And it's the same thing for what you do, especially for what you do, because you're literally like touching people, you're asking them their, you know, their health history. And if you're a network doc, you're going even deeper, right? Like into their energy, you know, essentially. And it's like, you can't just be a logo and a stock photo of someone, you know, frolicking through a field. Like that doesn't make me want to book an appointment with you.
Mhm.
I need to see it and be able to see myself like, ooh, this person probably isn't going to be the right fit for me. And that, talk about patient retention, that helps with retention too. Like if you got to think about, this is not just a short, it's a long game too.
Mhm.
Because when someone comes in as a right match based on you being yourself on social media, they're like, oh my gosh, this Patrick guy is hilarious. Like, I want to come to Dr. Danny's office because I really vibe with this guy. And like, then you've got a patient for life. Like, you know what I mean? So really, that's why it's important. It's not about, like I said, we very rarely use stock images or like random graphics of like happy donut day. Like those aren't the things people, I think, associate with social media, but it's just, that's not it, especially in 2024.
Got it. Got it. You know, it's funny that you say that about learning to breastfeed. I have learned how to do so many repairs in my house or cars by going on YouTube. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, really, it's like, oh, how do I change this in the car? And that's where I look. It used to be you'd call a relative or something, but that's what people do for better or for worse. That's just, you know, reality. You know, this is the world we live in at this point. So, you know, does Instagram, people ask all that, like I put things up, I put cute pictures of puppies or whatever. Like, does Instagram really work to attract right fit practice members?
Yes, if you're doing it correctly.
Okay.
So like I said, it can't be like the stock images. It can't be, I can maybe count on one hand when we've used stock imagery in the last year for our clients. Um, it's it's also more than just posting, you know, like I said, people want to see you. I'm always like, your litmus test is like, let's say you're pediatric and peds, and I come to your Instagram page and there's 0 photos of kids or pregnant women. I'm like, I don't believe you. You know what I mean? Like you say you do this thing, but then I don't see it on your page. So because you're already in a profession that's met with a lot of skepticism, it's like you have to show people these things.
Mhm.
And there's a couple, if I may, there's a couple different things I see that typically when someone says, I've just been posting every day and it's not working, um, the non-personal feel is usually one big thing I always see. And then the other thing is on the back end, there's a lot of networking and community building that needs to be going on that you would never see forward facing. Like if you were to just go to someone's page and be like, oh, I'm going to copy their strategy, and I see they're posting 5 times a week or whatever. What I teach this inside of Holistic Marketing Hub, and for our top tier Instagram management clients, we do this service where we're actually like going out to other businesses in the community and commenting and like trying to make connections as if you would in real life. So people think that social media is just so super passive, right? It's like, I'm just going to throw this up and it's going to be like the field of dreams. And if I build it, they will come. And it's like, well, it doesn't really work that way. It'd be like the equivalent to going to a networking event and just like standing against the wall with like holding your business card up, like, please come find,
Yeah.
like you literally have to go out there and make connections. So if I were to boil all like social media quote success down to two main things, it would be your messaging and networking. I'll continue with networking since that's what we were just talking about, but we love to have collab posts with people in the community, like here's Dr. Danny's favorite place to go out to eat, or it could be synergistic in terms of like, here's our, favorite counselor, yoga studio, what name, lactation consult, what somebody you might actually refer patients to. So it doesn't have to be like chiropractic centric, right? It can literally just be like, here's my favorite coffee shop and boutique and whatever. But just like showing you're part of the community, just like as you would like in a normal business environment, like the whole networking. The other networking thing we like to always do is have our clients email their database of patients at least every 6 weeks saying, are you following us on Instagram? And like linking back to like a piece of content that might have performed well. Be like, come weigh in on this post. Dr. Danny loves his purity coffee. Like, come weigh in. What's your favorite kind of, you know what I mean? Because you want to fill your Instagram with your current patients. That serve.
I gotta pause you there just a second.
Yeah.
You did that post for us with the purity coffee. The company commented on that.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, so glad you like it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, typically they will, but with the like I said, like trying to get your current patients to come follow you, people are like, well, isn't this about new patients? It's like, well, this is a twofold answer. One, sure, of course we can get you new patients, but also going back to that conversation we had at the beginning about return people and top of mind. Even with email marketing, which is another thing we teach and do for our clients, it's like sometimes I'll delete. I actually don't think I ever opened my chiropractor's emails, but just seeing them in my inbox reminds me to book my appointment.
No, right.
So the same thing can happen with Instagram, but if you fill your Instagram with your current patients, then the algorithm, you're like giving them a map to who to show your post to. You're like, oh, show these to more these type of people in Boulder, Colorado. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and then sometimes I just straight up tell people, I'm like, if it's slow and it needs a little CPR, I am not above asking. I'm like,
I gotta say something really important before I lose track of
go. Yeah.
As you go further, one, what you said about emails, this is extremely true. We send out an email on Sunday night for our office every Sunday. Now, inevitably, things happen, and there will be a Sunday that it doesn't go out for some reason. Doesn't happen too often, but once in a while it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever Sunday night we do not send that out, that Monday, like 25% less visits. Like inevitably, if for some reason, I'm not,
wow,
I adjust people on Monday, and if I notice that like, wow, this is weird, it's slow, and I will message my team, did the email it never fails. That's the day there was a glitch, something happened, it didn't go out. And I don't believe people read it just like you said, or they glance over it, but somehow it reminds them to go.
yes.
And so it's just, and so you can take that as Danny's tips that you tell all your clients. Like
I love that.
And it's inevitably that's something. If I'm like, why is it slow like this? It didn't go out for some weird glitch, and then the second thing is this, like, that from us being friends, our office is focused on people doing true chiropractic, specifically our approach, but a certain messaging as to what chiropractic is. And so, and every office, I'm sure you've learned, is like a little bit unique in terms of what their messaging. It probably makes it quite the challenge for you to
a lot unique,
that,
a lot.
like, how do I do this and represent this office in its unique way? Because it's a little different. Even they both are upper cervical or whatever. They want a certain kind of messaging going out. So, as on this podcast, we tell people all the time, look, chiropractic is not about, and this is the brand of Mile High, is not chiropractic being a glorified physical therapist. You're a chiropractor. You have to know the principles and values of what we do. In fact, I've actually had people come up to me or meet me somewhere and said, thanks to, listening to your podcast, I know not to be a glorified physical therapist. Otherwise it would have been that. And I'm like, wow, that's great. But, if person wants their office to be representative of chiropractic, its principles, that an adjustment is more than their spine being cracked or some pain going away, can they do that with social media?
Yes. But you're not going to like my answer because it really just depends on, it depends on the warmth of your audience, right? So your office is a little different. You're in a bigger city. People have a lot of options. You have I don't want to call it the luxury, but you have the choice in your bigger area to maybe attract the more, and I'm going to use the word sophisticated, but I don't mean the opposite of that as being derogatory. You have the option in your area to attract a little bit more of a sophisticated, I'm going to call them warmer patient who maybe is already familiar with these terms and they just didn't have a great experience with their old chiropractor. And maybe they just want to come try something different or a different approach, right? But if you're either in a smaller town and you don't really have a whole lot of options, or B, you're just trying to, at the end of the day, more new people who've never been under care need to be under care, right? And the way we attract, the messaging we use to attract that cold audience is very different than the messaging we use to attract the more warm client. So that's when I normally am saying we don't care. I know you want to say you correct subluxations, but that's not bringing anyone to your office. And I know it's like a slap in the face to all of you who teach.
I know people think that. I
get it. But from a marketing standpoint, I'll give you a perfect example. I had a client ask me to write a post about their CLA, the insight scanner, right? And I was like, okay, tell me about, which I've had it used on, I know about it, but I'm like, I want to hear their words, right? I'm like, your initial, and actually I was walking a hub student through this as well. It's your initial, as a chiropractor is usually who has a little more of an analytical brain. You're going to go here's the features and benefits in my scanner, right? It's okay, wait, no, I've listened to Molly and Molly says, we need to talk about how this impacts our patient and how it helps solve their problem. So I'm going to say, I have a scanner that measures stress. And I'm going to say, no, because that's not something that most people, again, if they're more the warm, sophisticated patient who's already very, very familiar with chiropractic principles, sure. But that's a small percentage of an already small percentage. That is a subset of a subset who's going to understand that language. Most people are going to know things they understand things I know my baby shouldn't be crying this frequently or this, prolonged. They understand things hey, my kid's been potty trained for years, yet they're still, having bedwetting episodes, or these are the things that these people connect with more than I have a machine that measures stress. Does that make sense? And a lot of people too are why would a baby be stressed? I've literally seen that commented on multiple posts. So even the word stress to me is still a little too, you can't touch it because it means something so different for so many people.
Right.
So that's why as since we do your social media, we frequently email you and say, hey, Dr. Danny, who are your last 10 new patients? And what did they list as their chief complaint? Not what did you determine needed to be done once they came in? What did they say? So one of our newest clients is a more pain-based chiropractor, and they're like, oh, yeah, hot discs. I was like, I know they didn't write hot disc on their intake form. And she's like, no, you're right, they didn't. I'm like, what did they say? Well, they said they bent over, heard a pop, and now they have shooting pain down their leg. I'm like, that's your marketing language, not hot disc. And it's so hard, right? Because you're in this world all day, every day, and it's hard to kind of go back to what does the layperson know? And I have this problem in my own, I use jargon all the time, and I'm like, wait, do my people know what that means? So I guess the nuance there to wrap it up is, yes, there is a time where you can use more sophisticated jargony language. If you tend to attract a clientele that already knows more about health and wellness and what they want.
Mhm.
But again, that's going to be a small percentage of a small percentage of the population.
Right. So then what's the solution for doctors that they have to pay attention to with their social media?
Again, go back to that exercise. And I actually have, if you go to mollycahill.com/branding, I have a exercise that walks you through this. If you want to think to say your next 5 posts, because you're like, okay, I want to just try this out and see what happens. Literally do what I just said. Go back to your last 5 new patients, your ideal new
Writing
patients,
this
right?
down, last 5 patients. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, obviously don't put one down here. You're like, ooh, how did you end up in my office? Not in a bad, that sounds mean, but like, this isn't my typical, your last 5 ideal patients. And look, what did they write down on their intake form as their chief complaint, their words? Once you got them into the office, was there something else that came up? And, oh yeah, I'm also can't sleep. I didn't write that on my intake form, but I'm having trouble sleeping. Oh yeah, also I can't, I do get migraines actually. I didn't write that on my intake form, but like, you know what I mean? So what are these things that come out? And there's even no matter how thorough your intake form is, there's stuff that comes out and you're like, well, why didn't you tell me that? And then think about things like, what have they tried before?
Right.
Did they try physical therapy? Did they try prescription medication? And what are you going to do differently for them?
Right.
And the last piece to consider is, what can't they do because of this thing? Is it they like to play pickleball and now they can't, or they can't, they're really anxious about going on the Disney vacation with their family because they're worried that they're not going to have the stamina to keep up with their grandkids for the whole trip. Whatever it is, like, what is the thing that they can't do because of the reason they're coming to you? And once you get all of those words on paper and see it, that becomes the language that's used on your content.
Got it.
Not here's the 3 principles of chiropractic. Like, I know that's lovely and you can use that some ways, but you have to start with language that like people are caring about that day in their moment, in their everyday life. Like, another good exercise is to transport yourself to their life at 3 p.m. Like, what does it look like for them? Are they like, my kid wants me to play monster trucks again, but I really don't want to, but I feel guilty that I should want to. And then like, is the baby going to be napping when I have to take the older one to soccer practice? And what's for dinner? Like, all of that needs to be in your marketing.
Right.
Because it makes people go, oh my gosh, Dr. Danny sees me. He gets me. So I know, like I said, I always see all of my lovely chiropractors feel deflated when I'm like, I'm sorry, we can do that some, right? But we can educate still. But if you're trying to go for the cold or casting a wide net, like I say, I'm not saying you can't do any of the more hard hitting education of like what chiropractic is, but there needs to be a balance of the more like language people understand versus like your own language.
Okay. Now you're doing something called a holistic marketing hub.
Yes.
Can you share more about what that is?
Yes. So everything I talked about, the networking piece and the messaging piece being really like the 2 main foundational things that make your social media work. I teach everything you can, like, from beginning to end inside the hub. And I literally just went and did something that sounds counterintuitive, but I actually cut a bunch of lessons from the hub because y'all are very busy people. You ain't got time for 12 hours of video modules. And so I literally went through, cut what wasn't necessary, just literally deleted it. I was like, they really don't need to know this. And I starred the lessons that are like, you have to watch this lesson to make your Instagram work. And I added up all of the starred video. And by video, I'm saying the training that'll help you learn how to market your practice effectively on Instagram. 3.2 hours.
Wow.
You could do that. If you can't do it, your front desk can. If you can't do it, if your front desk can't, hire a patient who you love. In fact, one of the lessons in the hub is a whole checklist on how to hire someone else to do it for you through using the hub as their training platform. But then the real baby of Holistic Marketing Hub that makes it so valuable, in my opinion, is the content library, which is, the last I checked, I think 450 posts. It's a social media content bank. Tons of different chiropractic, tons of health, mental health, women's health, supplements, yoga, massage, you name it, acupuncture, where you can literally just go grab and copy the caption and paste it. And there's like little Mad Lib places to like add in, your own flair.
Right. Right.
And you're hearing it here first. We have a huge team project where we're going through and adding that Reels hook, that really really specific, wow, you get me language to every single reel. Every single caption inside the hub.
Oh, wow.
Things like POV, you're a mom and no, Miralax isn't the solution to your child's constipation, and you find our account. Like that's how specific these things that are working on Instagram right now. And we're adding those to the content library.
Well, very cool. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, I'm excited. And then you also get a lot of support from me. We have a Slack channel where I'm always in there answering people's questions. We have monthly support. So it's not like a super passive, you don't hear from me again type of thing.
So if people want to get more Molly Cahill and
Yeah.
like, hey, I need help with my Instagram or social media overall, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, Instagram's the best place. I'm at Molly A. Cahill, and Cahill is spelled with a C, Cahill. Also, my website's mollycahill.com. You'll see a tab for the Holistic Marketing Hub right at the top. We do have an Instagram management agency. At this time, we're actually full, and one of our main gals is going on maternity leave. And so we're kind of trying to, figure that out. But we should be onboarding new clients probably by November of 2024. But I really think you can do this. Like I said, if you empower someone in your office to do it. And will this air before Mile High? Yes.
Yes. And so the other
Okay.
thing I was going to say
Yeah.
is most certainly visit Molly and her team
Yeah.
at Mile High.
Yes, come see. Well, it'll just be me, but come see me. I wish I could have a team with me. I'm like, I don't want to go by myself. But yeah, it'll just be me. So come say hi. And I love talking to people. So
Excellent. Excellent. Well, again, thank you so much for being with us today. And I look forward to seeing you at Mile High. And
same.
everyone who's watching, listening, keeps changing spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic. And when you're at Mile High, most certainly say hello to Molly. And we look forward to seeing you. If you have not reserved your seats yet, look, nobody likes a procrastinator. Just make it happen. milehigh.com, and we look forward to seeing you on higher ground.